All right, welcome back, everyone. We are in Redwood City, California today, and we are so excited because we are meeting with Pram from Guru, and I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Pram, as you just introduced me. I am an engineer by training, and here at Guru we are a non-profit organization. We kind of develop the GPS for education and skills. And my background is an engineer, as I mentioned. Led a large team at Google on developing Google Maps and worked on many other interesting products at Google, and have a lot of skill and capability in terms of how do you apply AI and machine learning, how do you build large systems, how do you kind of think about user design and things of that nature. And I want to bring that to education, and that's what Guru has been working on for the past several years now.
So you mentioned Google Maps,
Yeah.
and then we talk about how that translates to education. Tell us how conceptually what we think of from Google Maps, which everyone's familiar with, how does that translate to education? How does that pathway capability matter?
Basically, if you think about all of education, whether it's kindergarten to 12 or higher education or skills or whatever, the entire focus is always on the destination. It's about, let's give you this curriculum, let's set these standards, let's assess you for where you are. And throughout your journey, nobody knows where you are, right? They only focus on the destination. So it's like if you have to go to San Francisco airport and I don't know anything about you and where you are, except that I know everything about SFO, and somebody is kind of waiting there to see if you show up or not. And if you do show up, they'll give you a C grade and demotivate you further, right? And that's kind of how we have set up the whole system. Now, the way we kind of think about it from a Google Maps perspective is, can we not locate the learner with high precision? It's about, can we not be the blue arrow, right? Where we stay with the learner. No harm if you make a wrong turn or you miss an exit, as long as the blue arrow also turns that way, then you are confident it will put you back onto the right route to get to your destination. And so can we kind of think about it conceptually from that perspective? The other nice things about GPS for learning, GPS systems in general, is everybody has assured success. You always get to your destination. It's not like we're going to check if you come there and then grade you and then kind of create other kinds of damages potentially. But it's like, why don't we kind of assure you that you're going to get there? Can we also bring the simplicity of the experience, right? It's like, you don't need to know about which road is one way, which way, what are the speed limits, what are they called. All you really need to know is to go straight for 1.2 miles and make a right turn,
Yes.
right? Can we not bring that simplicity of experience into learning? So these are kind of things that, we think of when we say, how do we eliminate the anxiety of learning? Is with assured success and simplicity of use, right? And this requires us to locate where the learner is in real time and continuously support them till they get to their destination.
So most of us know how you find us when we're driving, right? My phone tells you my location, and then that allows you to map me. How do you know where I am as a learner? Because it's a much more complex space, and I don't think we've yet been able to just read into the brain, at least not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I will say on the tour, lots of people suspect we can do that, but I assure you we cannot do it. No.
Yeah. So there are two problems actually in what you just pointed out. One is, how do you locate, and two is, how do you represent the location, right?
Right.
So like if we take the GPS example, I can locate you with latitude and longitude, right? And represent you with a certain level of precision of lat long, right, in a Cartesian coordinate system and so on and so forth. So that is what allows the route computation and the rerouting and all of that stuff, all of those algebra to work.
Right.
Now, in learning, the way we locate you can be through a diagnostic. We can give you a diagnostic across the different domains of whatever curriculum you're trying to learn and say what is the highest competency you have across each of the domains. And then what is the representation model that allows for an algebra to work, right? Because I have to now compute route, reroute, mean time to learn, or some mathematical measures have to be computed once I locate you. Now, that is where we kind of, have come up with this model which we call as a skyline that represents every learner. Skyline is a polyline mathematically and allows us to now compute all these measures. So your location can be used in personalizing your journey for you.
So if I were to put those in layman's terms, right, there's some sort of testing that occurs. Now the testing, most of us are familiar with standardized testing in a classroom, but that's not what you're talking about, am I correct?
It's kind of analogous in the sense it's a diagnostic.
Okay.
Right? And we kind of use this technique, which we call as progressive approximation. Right? We're not trying to get it absolutely right the first time. We are trying to get a good enough location of you. And then as you learn with the system, we're going to kind of refine our understanding about who you are and as a result where you are located in terms of your knowledge, skills, and mindsets. And that is kind of, so it's a diagnostic that starts us off with an first approximation of your current knowledge.
Okay. And so does it tell you things like, this is how much algebra knowledge I have? Or does it additionally tell you things like, and these are my skill sets? I have a tendency of working well with others, or I have a tendency or preference in focusing in a certain content area. Do those additional pieces also get calculated?
Yeah. So we kind of call these as facets of learning, right? So one facet could be mathematics. The other facet could be soft skills. The third facet could be science. So in each of these facets, there are different domains, right? And when you talk about soft skills, it could be about your communication skills. It could be about your collaboration skills. It could be about your time management and so on and so forth. So it kind of tracks how you're doing against each of the domain. And so essentially you have what we call as a skyline for each facet. So now that information is kind of effectively a blue arrow in Google Maps. So.
Right. It reminds me a lot of, I had a daughter who was born very prematurely. And so we were constantly surveying all the different parts of her body. And in a normal person, if you come with a sinus infection, we just look at one piece.
Yeah.
But in a person like this, you need to know how the lung functioning is happening, how the brain is functioning, how the liver is functioning, how the skin is holding up to all of the sticks, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, all the blood work and everything that would tell us. It was this huge map of information. But that wasn't enough, because what was really interesting was how one change in one system causes 5 other effects in another system.
Correct.
And so you couldn't say, well, just the lungs have gone down. You had to say, well, the lungs are starting to be problematic, which means I'm worried now about the brain not getting enough oxygen, which means now I'm also worried about continuous functioning in the limbs, and so on and so forth. Tell me about how understanding the whole human from a learning perspective changes the way we can personalize education. Because right now, like you said, a teacher has a destination, and they have to meet milestones, and they have to show that every student spends X amount of time doing X work.
Correct.
But this would change the game entirely.
Yeah, so you use the word, right, which is we need to understand the learner. It's not about profiling the learner. It's not about grading them. It's not about scoring them or any such thing, right? How do you build a complete understanding of the learner across all of their facets? So any given activity you do, let's say you're in your science class and you're doing a project on measuring the time period of a pendulum, right? Now, and you're working with a bunch of friends on this. So while you're learning science, you're building collaboration capabilities. You have to present the project to the class at the end. So you are building some presentation skills or communication capabilities and so forth. So every given activity kind of enhances your competency across many different facets. And that's kind of what the system captures, so that it continuously tracks how you're progressing. And now, once we have this understanding of the learner, we can use what principles of learning say to come up with what should the right next activity be. Should we increase your depth of knowledge in a concept? Should we revisit a concept that you had previously learned to just make sure that you are not forgetting, or there's no decay of that? Should we kind of build your capability to learn using certain other types of learning mechanisms, because we see that you have been learning a lot using one type of interaction, right? So all of these things can be enabled, because now we fully understand who you are, or not fully, we better understand who you are, right? Way better understand who you are, and we understand it now. The system can support and suggest to the student or to the teacher as to what should the next activity be.
I'm reminded of a situation when my son started second grade. They had us fill out a form, and it said, "What is your goal for your child this year?" And I wrote down, "I want him to laugh so hard that he falls out of the chair or has nose juice." And the teacher says, "Don't you have any academic goals for him?" I said, No, he's probably academically through the entire year already. I mean, this is second grade, and he already reads, and he does math very well. But socially, he's still uptight, and I'd love to see him just let loose. So really what I want is for him to feel comfortable in himself and do these things. And a number of parents have felt this. Maybe they have a child who's really good at reading but struggles in math, or maybe they have a child that is confident at home, but they see as shy at school. Mm-hmm. These soft skills can also then be targeted, correct? Because
absolutely.
An activity for him may be 10 minutes of work, but maybe he needs to do 15 or an hour of craft time instead.
Correct, exactly. And kind of what should the class activities be that build on these soft skills, right? Yeah. So for example, introspection or planning or goal setting, all of these kind of enhance your soft skills. So it's not just solving Pythagorean theorem problems or photosynthesis, right? Yeah. So if you just obsess over those things because that's what you finally get tested in, right, then it becomes harder to achieve those simply because you're lacking on some of these non-cognitive skills. And so developing activities that build out these non-cognitive skills will actually help with more of the curriculum stuff.
Yeah, it's like providing everybody with a toolkit instead of constantly saying, yes, I understand that you have one pair of running shoes and you've been running in them for 10 years straight, but just keep pushing through. Keep pushing through, you'll get there. So I had another situation this morning where I was talking to somebody, and this gentleman does not have a formal education degree in higher ed. He's done probably 15 different fairly high-level jobs in his lifetime, and is what we would often refer to as a jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. And his wife was saying how, well, he picks stuff up so quickly and he's so smart, but he doesn't have this degree. And I said, well, just wait, because we're going to start recognizing those capabilities. Exactly. So in the adult world, moving out of K-12, how do you see this possibility, this ability to diagnose and really represent the whole human, regardless of where you get that information, right? As stay-at-home moms, we learn to multitask pretty amazingly well.
Correct.
That doesn't show up on a resume very often.
Correct.
People, when you stay at home, often say you work inside the home. We've at least gotten to that point. I don't know anybody besides myself that puts it on a resume. Yeah. But I say it in every speech. I am a scientist and a mama because I have learned lots of skills being a mom that I never would have learned in school. And I feel like it's really meaningful. How do you see that kind of playing out going forward for people who learn in different ways?
Yeah, so one is to kind of know where the gaps are, right? So for this person who is a jack of all trades, he clearly has gaps in some formal understanding of the concepts. He clearly knows how to apply it. He is very good with his hands, perhaps, and he knows how to kind of build things and so forth. But he just lacks the formalism that surrounds that. So if we could locate what he knows, where his gaps are, then for someone of his caliber and his ability to work hard, it shouldn't be difficult to pick up these formalisms, so that it makes him far more complete in his thing, in his traits, right? And to us, that is the key. It's like he already comes with some strength, but we are not able to understand where his gaps are and fill those gaps so that we can complete. But instead, we would rather him go through some standard program designed for everybody, which is designed for nobody, right? And so we kind of, so as a result, for him, it's a royal waste of time and money.
Right.
And it's just not feasible given he's already working, he has a family, and so on and so forth. But if he's able to pick up, fill the gaps by picking up the necessary knowledge and skills, then on his own timeline, on his own terms, then we can see that he can upskill himself, he can get better paying jobs, and he can have higher incomes, and all the good things will begin to happen.
So it makes me think from a Google Maps perspective that we've applied this assumption that everybody is driving from DC to California. And so everybody, we know it's this many thousand miles, it's going to take you this long to get there, and you're going to travel at this rate of speed.
Correct.
But this guy might already be in Nevada.
Correct.
And so all he has to do is that small jaunt. So maybe it's a 3 months of upskilling instead of 4 years to do that formal education.
And he may be in Nevada, and he may be looking to ride a bus to California, right?
That's true.
He is not even interested in driving, right? He needs bus routes presented to him.
Okay.
And he's going to, because that's how he wants to get to California, right?
Sure.
Driving may not be for him, right? Or someone else may want to take the train. Someone else who is closer to California may choose to walk it up, and so forth. So the question is how you want to get there is up to you, right? And how do we kind of facilitate that? Everybody has a starting point, everybody has a destination, and there are a bunch of resources available to everybody. And how they want to make the journey or make the navigation or navigate through the journey is up to them. And that's kind of the flexibility that we need to offer.
So how does all of this enable people to be ready for jobs of the future better than we are today?
I think it's about being purposeful, about first knowing where you are and saying, hey, this is the job I want to prepare for. And what does it mean to prepare for a job, right? If you have a particular set of skills and this job requires a certain other set of skills, and there are clear gaps, and we understand, that you have 19 competencies to gain to go from your current set of skills to your new set of skills. And as you're making progress towards the new set of skills, the number of competencies that you need to gain keeps reducing. From 19, you go to 17, you go to 12, and so forth. Then you're making progress. And then when you get to the full 19, then all employers can know that, hey, you have mastery in all these competencies, right? So it's not about how well you write the resume or how well you perform in an interview alone. It's really about having clear evidence of what is your portfolio, what did you do to acquire these competencies, right? When did you acquire them? How did you perform while acquiring these competencies? Sharing all of this with your employer will make it much easier for them to kind of give you the job that you're looking for.
So I feel like people believe they have that right now in some ways because companies have a list of requirements. This is what you need to apply for this job. And then you make a resume that says, I have those competencies. I feel like one of the major issues we have, both from an equity of access perspective and from a getting a job perspective, are what one of our interviewees called unwritten rules. I've always called them game rules. And I often tell the story about when I went to college and I thought my job was to go to class and do well in school and earn my scholarship. And then I was going to get a really good resume, a really good job. And then I figured out that what I was supposed to have done was, yes, do well in my classes, but I was also supposed to spend a lot more time socializing because, of course, what I was supposed to be doing was building the connections that would be my future colleagues. I didn't know that rule. And it was a big lesson for me when everybody called their parents, not because their parents were going to give them a job, but because their parents were going to give them an introduction. And that introduction was going to get them an interview, and that interview was going to get them their first job. And from there, they were going to meet colleagues and keep progressing forward. I, on the other hand, ended up at a pharmacy because I needed health insurance and I needed to eat now. And I thought, why am I working at a pharmacy? Eventually, the pharmacy also asked that question. Why are you here? Well, because I need basics, right? Okay. I had not prepared, or I didn't even know to prepare for these other pieces of job development. I think we have a lot of people in this country who feel frustrated that it seems like those doors are closed because those game rules are not evident to everyone. How might a system like this start to unveil some of that?
So the first and foremost is to kind of understand what is expected of every job. Now, people write out some kind of high-level job description.
Right.
They ask you 3 questions in an interview and decide whether you qualify for it or not. Now, you would have written 1-page resume as well. And between that 1-page resume, and which, sometimes may be kind of generously represented, yeah. 3 questions or 5 questions will determine whether you get the job or not. There's no objectivity to the entire process.
Right.
What we can bring is objectivity. We say, this job requires all these set of competencies that you should have skills in, mastery in. Now, you can establish that you have those mastery in those competencies or, in 80% of them or 90% of them.
Right.
And the job can decide, can they train you for the other 10% that you're missing? And if the 10% that you're missing are trainable on the job, then you qualify for the job. Now it's a matter of trying to understand if, the rest of the things like the working hours work well, if you have to work the second shift instead of the first shift, or, are you willing to start on a particular date? And sorting out those kind of stuff, but there is objectivity in terms of your fit for the job. And that's kind of what we feel that is lacking today.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of networking, in terms of building connections and stuff like that, all of that were required simply because we had opaqueness in the rest of the system.
Right.
No, right? It was not about people advertised, hey, we need these 22 competencies, people with these competencies, please apply for this job. And you said, I have 18 of the 22 you want, and then you got the job and you trained for the other 4. So because we lacked this objectivity, we kind of built all these other systems of, it's about networking, it's about whom you know, it's about getting the right introduction and so on, because employers don't want to hire people who got introduced to them. They want to hire the best fit because they are looking for profitability as well. And
right.
Today employers don't have the way to find people with the best fit because again, there's no objectivity in the whole process.
Yeah. So if it's the case that we can personalize the education system at the youngest level, not lowest, but youngest level, then we start crediting people for their personal capabilities and skill sets, whether they learn that formally or outside, however they got it. And then we start matching them to jobs better. At the more national level versus the individual, what do we start seeing our country being able to do?
I think this can be transformative. There are a lot of studies which show that if we can close the income inequality gap, then all of the social indicators improve, right? And if we are able to address this one single thing, then all of the social indicators, whether it's about poverty or healthcare or child death per thousand children under the age of 5 or whatever, all of these will magically transform. So now the question is, how do we close the income gaps or inequality gaps?
Right.
And this provides a very, very clear, measurable, objective approach to it. Now people, you would have heard very often that they say, oh, there's so many jobs that go unfilled.
Yes.
And there's so many people who are unemployed or underemployed. And the question is, can somebody please tell me, what do the jobs that are going unfilled, what competencies do they need? And what are the competencies of people who are here, who are underemployed? And how do we is it bridgeable? Sometimes it's not bridgeable because the gaps may be too much, but in many cases it may be bridgeable, in which case let's kind of bridge it and give these guys the opportunities that are awaiting.
Yeah, or maybe there's a small difference that they, here's where you are, here's where you need to be to get that next job. And so
Correct.
This is the one that's the shortest distance for you.
Correct.
Let's upskill you in that space versus what happens right now is you go to a job like support center and they say, all right, kind of what have you done before? All right, let's get you a certification in something similar. All right, keep moving. And it feels like that. It's very generalized, very automated, versus saying, okay, I know that's what you did, Roger. What's your passion? What's your interest? What other things do you do? And as a psychologist, when I talk to people, I frequently find, oh my goodness, this person has these 8 other skills that have been completely untapped, not because they couldn't do them great, but because growing up, they didn't have those opportunities. And so they assumed that they had to stay in this space, or they didn't know how to move from where they are to where they need to go to be able to do what they love and what they're really talented at. Mm-hmm. From the national level, I often look at this and say, when we don't match our people to the jobs that we need, it's not just the case that we have unemployment. It's that we actually lose out on a national capability of success.
Exactly.
Right? There are arguably people who would be amazing doctors, but who don't know the pathway to medical school to be able to get there. Too many of us make the assumption that people do. I remember being younger and thinking about, wow, it'd be really cool to be an astronaut. I have no idea how you apply for that job, but I'm pretty sure there's a way to do it. Or, hey, well, we'll take right now. I think I'll run for president. And people go, can you do that? Interesting. Most people think you can't just do it. I said, you and 2,000 other people can do it. Here's the website. Go sign up. Wait, really? It's that simple? It's that simple. Sign up for it. In fact, there's a YouTube channel on how to sign up for it because oddly enough, you have to fill out Form 2 before you fill out Form 1. And when I called the woman to ask her, why is that way? She goes, lady, after 10 years, I stopped asking. And there's government for you. But it is this case that we often don't know the pathway. Even if we see something that we think we might be good at,
Correct.
We don't know that pathway. And this has been the personal journey that I've gone through when I made the decision with my family that, hey, I have this set of competencies that we believe you would need in a leadership position. But it's the pathway that trips you up because the pathway has been set now to say there is only one path.
Correct.
And it means that we keep choosing the same people. And, you can agree with me or not agree with me, but that part is pretty universally accepted. It would be very interesting if we could assess the competencies that are needed.
Correct.
And then create a scorecard for our politicians, not based on the standard use, but on the ones that we agreed on going forward. It would be very fascinating to see if
exactly. And the fact that you have toured the country and really understood all the people and what their aspirations are, what their wants are, and so forth. To me, all of this is a necessary part of the set of competencies that you need to gain towards even aspiring to be a president of United States. And it's not just about having being a senator from one state or
No.
any such thing. It's like, do you understand? Because you're the president, you're running for the president of the country, not for a state. And
Right.
so your understanding about everything that's happening around the country is a prerequisite for this job.
I think most people would agree. We don't know how to assess it. And we
Yes.
don't know how to create that pathway for people that measures. And so it's a great analogy to what
Yeah.
you've described, because so many of us don't know how to get to that space. And I think if we did, we would be removing those barriers, like you said, and making that happen. Now, there's one other really important part about Guru that we haven't talked about, which I'll just touch on briefly: cost.
So Guru is completely open and it's free. We believe education is a human right, and we are completely grant funded. So everything we innovate using the grants, and we provide all of the solution that we develop for free and as an open source software to all of our partners and all of our users. So, and this is kind of important to understand that people who fund us, the philanthropists, the federal grants, or individual donors, they kind of intend this. They don't want to just support one organization, they want to support the larger mission. And we kind of want to be the vehicle for them to serve the larger mission by developing this core capability, which is, if you think about what a Google Maps is, it's a data backbone, right? Google doesn't build Starbucks or gas stations or roads or highways, right? Similarly, Guru is a learning data backbone. So we have created this infrastructure, and we work with a full range of partners who could be research scientists or people developing content and curriculum or people doing implementation in schools or in skills training and so forth. And all of these people get to leverage what we have developed for free.
So when we talk about free education in the future, in my mind, based on what you've said, I imagine someone just like they do with their Google Maps. I don't pay to use it every time, right? The businesses benefit because I find the ones that I want to get to, not just the one that's convenient, right?
Correct.
So when I want to learn something, I would go on, I would figure out what I wanted to learn, and I would be able to access that for free, wouldn't I?
Yeah. And
It changes the whole model.
Exactly. It's about affordable learning solutions, right? You kind of want to think about people who cannot afford high cost options. And people who can, they can certainly get that.
Right.
But people who cannot, they still have a right to high quality education. And that's what, we enable one important part of it, which is we provide the learning solution part of it. And the rest of the affordability comes from, affordability of content, affordability of the, devices and connectivity and all of that stuff. And what we see is a lot of those things have come down to a point where a vast majority can afford. And if we are able to provide a GPS-like experience that assures them that they get to their destination, if they were to put in the right level of effort, then we have a big game changer here.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone.